Welcome back! Now, with the Summer Game Fest kicking off this Friday, this week's recap is a bit leaner on the news side of things, but what the news part lacks, the review roundup surely picks up. So this actually became a much meatier recap than I first thought it would be. So without further ado, let's kick things off with some horrible news, as EA has confirmed that they have cancelled the development of their upcoming Black Panther game and the immediate closure of Cliffhanger Games, which actually just opened in 2023 just to develop this game. EA boss Laura Meal said in a memo obtained by IGN that the company is cancelling the game and closing the studio to, and I quote here, sharpen our focus and put our creative energy behind the most significant growth opportunities. She continued the memo with, these decisions are hard. They affect people we've worked with, learned from, and shared real moments with. We're doing everything we can to support them, including finding opportunities within EA, where we've had success helping people land in new roles. Besides the closure of Cliffhanger Games, EA is also laying off staff on its mobile and central teams, though the exact number of the affected staff members is unknown at this moment. Earlier in April, EA already laid off around 300 people, and that led to the cancellation of a Titanfall universe game. There were, according to LinkedIn, 74 developers working at Cliffhanger Games, and they were onboarding new hires as recently as last month. The studio was led by Kevin Stevens, who oversaw the production of Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor and Middle-earth: Shadow of War at Monolith Productions. He joined EA in 2021, and other members of the team at Cliffhanger worked on Halo, God of War, and Call of Duty games before they joined. Going forward, Mila said that EA would focus on key franchises like Battlefield, The Sims, Skate, and Apex Legends, while development will continue on their Iron Man game and the next Star Wars Jedi game. EA Mobile's game projects remain intact, while BioWare continues to make the next Mass Effect as well. She didn't mention EA Sports titles like EA FC, Madden, or Formula 1, as she is not in charge of the EA Sports branch. Now, it's not clear how far along in development the Black Panther game was when it got cancelled. When the game was announced back in 2023, EA said the game was still very early in development with a long road ahead. Apparently, the game would have featured an evolved version of the Nemesis system found in the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War games, a feature where enemies that have defeated you would rise in ranks of their armies and learn from your vulnerabilities, as well as taunt you the next time you cross their path. There is still some good news for Black Panther fans, as the Skydance-developed Marvel 1943 Rise of Hydra is still set to release sometime next year, and that game will also feature the hero from Wakanda. Maybe you've already seen the advertisements for it, but it are the PlayStation Days of Play, and that means that the PlayStation 5 Pro has gotten its very first price cut ever, albeit temporary one. During these days of play that are being held until the 11th of June, the PlayStation 5 Pro gets a €50, dollar or pound discount. But also the PlayStation 5 Slim Digital and disc versions are seeing a pretty nice discount. The Slim Digital Edition went down from €499 to €399, while the disc version dropped from €549 to €449, and the equivalent pricing in dollars and pounds. US and Canada gamers can take some extra advantage of these days of play discounts, as they'll be able to buy a special Call of Duty Black Ops 6 bundle for just $399 if you go for the digital edition of the console. In Canada, the same bundle will cost you $509 Canadian. Or is it Canadian dollars? I'm not sure. But wait, there is more, because if you really need a PlayStation VR 2 headset, you can now get a €50 discount on it. And to wrap the Days of Play news up for now, PlayStation is also adding a few games to the PlayStation Plus catalog for its extra and premium members, but we'll cover those in the sort of free games segment later on, so please stick around. In other PlayStation news, but way less positive, Marathon. You know, the extraction shooter from Bungie that was in the news last week for its theft of art assets? Well, it's back in the news, as rumor has it that Sony is planning to delay the game while Bungie is investigating how this could have happened. Because of that rumored delay, Sony is also rumored to halt all paid promotion for the game until further notice. Now, to be clear, these are all rumors and it isn't confirmed by Sony or Bungie yet, but honestly, it wouldn't be surprising if Marathon got delayed, given its lukewarm reception and feedback of its first closed alpha. Not many players returned to play, and even the Twitch stream charts of the game spell a poor reception. Marathon was supposed to launch on the 23rd of September, but guess we'll have to see if this is still the case. Switching over to Team Green for a bit, because the American Federal Trade Commission, or the FTC, has dropped its appeal to Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard King, albeit only after the 9th Circuit Court has rejected the FTC's appeal earlier this month. And in other Xbox news, Microsoft has reportedly paused the development of their own handheld console and is instead doubling down on third-party collaborations like Project Canon and Windows 11 gaming optimization, at least according to some insider sources from Windows Central. According to those sources, Microsoft has not completely cancelled the development of the first-party Xbox handheld console, as there are currently 3 prototypes in development. Instead, Microsoft has decided to prioritize its teams to improve Windows 11 gaming performance, specifically for devices like the Asus partner device codenamed Project Canon. It's possible that the existential threat from SteamOS, which on paper delivers better gaming performance than Windows 11 itself, has informed these decisions. And we end the news segment with a very short piece. CD Projekt Red has announced that their Cyberpunk 2077 sequel has officially entered its production stage. The game is now also no longer called Project Orion internally, but simply Cyberpunk 2. But don't expect a release date anytime soon, as it's expected to arrive sometime late 2030 or early 2031. Which still sounds super futuristic to me, but it's only 5 years from now. I guess that says more about me than anything, but hey. Review roundup time now, and we start with a game that released just after the script for last week's show was finalized. Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny, a remake of the 2002 classic. And critics seem to like the remaster quite a bit, as it sits on a strong 75 on OpenCritic. GameRant gave it an 8 and called it a remaster that does the PlayStation 2 original justice. The Gamer scored it a 4 out of 5, while PC Gamer gave it a lukewarm 64, stating that Onimusha 2 represents the design tenets of a bygone era, more often for worse than better. The Sixth Axis straight up disliked the remake and gave it a 5 out of 10, saying Capcom has squandered the opportunity to spoil players with behind-the-scenes developer content and has instead offered the players to swap weapons with one button press instead of having to open a menu to do so. They even went so far to say that you'd better save your money by digging out your old PlayStation 2 and playing the original on there. Oof, that's a rough take. On Steam, Onimusha 2 currently sits at a very positive 86%, but with only 255 reviews, most of them praising Capcom for finally releasing a version of the game for modern platforms, while some seem to hate that the game seems to be a censored version. Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny is now available on all platforms, even last-gen consoles. Next up is 2AT, the latest brainchild of Keita Takahashi, who also created Katamari Damacy. In 2AT, you play as a teen navigating life in a small town while his body is permanently stuck in a T-pose. Critics are a bit mixed about it, resulting in a fair 72 on OpenCritic. PC Gamer rated 2AT a 70, citing the game has a funny story with lots of surprises, but control and camera issues dampen the fun. A sentiment almost perfectly mirrored in GameSpot's review, only they gave it a 6 out of 10. Push Square was a lot more enthused by it, which is reflected by its 8 out of 10. They also praised the fun and quirky story and added that To a T is a perfect pick-me-up game guaranteed to make you smile. Over on Steam, To a T currently sits at a perfect 100%, but with only 41 reviews at the time of recording this, so maybe take that perfect score with a pinch of salt. If you are curious but don't want to shell out your money just yet, you can play a free demo over on Steam. To a T is now available on PC, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X. Fuga Melodies of Steel 3 is the final part in the Fuga Melodies of Steel RPGs trilogy that adds a brand new battle system that introduces weakness combos, and those allow you to exploit enemy weaknesses and deal escalating damage with every hit. So far there aren't many reviews for the game, but all the reviews that have been released seem to love it, as Fuga Melodies of Steel 3 currently sits at a strong 82 on OpenCritic. And it's also the second game with a perfect 100% on Steam this week, but just like To a T, it only has a small number of reviews, so take that score with the appropriate pinch of salt. Fuga Melodies of Steel is now available on all platforms. And we're keeping the 100 approval rating on Steam Streak alive with Pipistrello and the Cursed Yo-Yo, the top-down Legend of Zelda inspired indie game from Pocket Trap. Now, just like the other two 100%ers on this review roundup, Pipistrello and the Cursed Yo-Yo only has a few reviews on Steam, 66 to be exact. So I would again advise you to take that score with the appropriate load of salt, but this time I actually won't say it. Well, I guess I did, but anyway, the game has a healthy amount of reviews on OpenCritic, where it currently sits at a mighty 88. The Sixth Axis scored it an impressive 9, saying Pipistrello and the Cursed Yo-Yo is a fantastic top-down adventure that deserves to be considered in the same echelon as classic Nintendo titles, but they do admit that the combat can be a little bit repetitive at times. Pipistrello and the Cursed Yo-Yo, a title by the way that I love saying, is out now on all platforms. Next up is Spray Paint Simulator, the distant nephew of Power Wash Simulator. It currently sits at a fair 70 on OpenCritic, with most reviewers unable to really recommend the game. But almost all of them say that if this type of game that puts you in an almost zen-like state while playing it is your kind of thing, then you'll absolutely love this one. On Steam, it currently sits at a mostly positive 72%, with most negative reviews commenting on the very obvious inspiration it took from Power Wash Simulator, and pointing out that there are too few maps and it currently has a bugged progression system. Now, if you still want to give Spray Paint Simulator a go but don't really want to pay for it, it's now available on Xbox Game Pass. Spray Paint Simulator is now available on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, Nintendo Switch and PC through Steam and the Windows Store. Okay, now it's time for the biggest release of the week, the co-op spin-off, Elden Ring Nightreign. It currently sits on a strong 80 on OpenCritic, where The Gamer gave it a 4.5 out of 5. They wrote that the Souls-like loop in a microcosm was unbelievably satisfying and the moments of victory in the game never felt better. But it does have some minor downsides, like the lack of cross-platform play and spongy bosses. IGN was a bit less impressed and gave it a 7, stating that when Elden Ring Nightreign is played exactly as it was designed to be played, it's one of the finest examples of a 3-player co-op game around. But that's harder to do than it should be, and playing solo is very poorly balanced. On Steam, things are looking even less impressive, as it currently sits at an unexpected mixed 67% with over 24,000 reviews. The negative ones primarily annoyed with the matchmaking if you don't have 2 other friends willing to play with you. And even when you do have 2 friends, the bosses are often too spongy for even 3 experienced Souls players. Others also seem to think that Nightreign is not much more than an asset flip of the base Elden Ring game with bosses that have larger health pools. But almost all reviews, even the positive ones, complain that the solo player experience is abysmal because of poor balancing, making it nigh on impossible to beat alone. Although I'm personally pretty sure that some crazy people already are trying to beat the game on their own just because they can and or love to torment themselves, so yeah, you do you. Anyway, Elden Ring Nightreign is now available on all platforms bar the Switch. And lastly, we have EA Sports F1 25, which currently sits at a strong 79 on OpenCritic, with hardcore gamers scoring it a 4 out of 5, saying that F1 25 doesn't offer that much new, but its car handling may just be the best the series has ever seen. PC Gamer was a bit less impressed and scored it a 74 and praised it for being wonderfully authentic, but lamenting the fact that the game is just too familiar, cumbersome to play with a controller, and that the career management is unusually tedious. And I have to admit that I very much disagree with PC Gamer on the playability with a controller, as I am currently playing F1 on PlayStation 5 with a controller, and I have to say that it feels a lot better than the past few years. It's much more responsive, and the wheel inputs are better calibrated for the analog sticks, resulting in a much smoother drive compared to last year's. But yeah, as much fun as it is to manage your own team, you do spend a bit too much time in the menus between races to make sure your team grows both in terms of technical advancements and finances. Okay, I'm gonna be honest here, I was not planning on reviewing F1 25 myself, but let's make a deal. If this recap reaches 200 views with, let's say 5 comments asking me to review it by the time next week's recap goes online, I'll do my own late review. Is that a deal? Okay. Anyway, on Steam, things are looking pretty impressive for an EA game, as F1 25 currently sits on a very positive 88%, with most reviews praising the new handling model, but lamenting the absence of classic cars and tracks. F1 25 is now available on PC, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X. Sort of free games time now, and we get things started with PlayStation, that has announced its lineup of free games for all its PlayStation Plus members for June. They will be giving away 3 games plus Destiny 2, the Final Shape expansion. That one you can already download right now. The other 3 games will become available June 3rd, and they are NBA 2K25, the Alone in the Dark remake, and Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. But there is more. As part of the PlayStation Days of Play, which we covered earlier in the show, they are also adding 4 new titles to the PlayStation Plus catalog for PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium subscribers. First up is another Scrap Treasure, which is playable right now. On June 2nd, they are adding Skull and Bones, which I might finally give a go now that it's sort of free. On June 4th, Sony is adding Destiny 2 Legacy Edition, which includes the standard editions of Lightfall and the Witch Queen, along with the Beyond Light pack, Shadowkeep pack, Forsaken pack, and the 30th Anniversary pack. Next week, on the 10th of June, Sony is also adding GTA 3 The Definitive Edition. So expect to see that one again next week during the sort of free game segment. But there is more, as Sony is also adding 2 new classics to the premium-only catalog on June 5th, because that's when you fancy people will be able to play Myst and its sequel Riven. Next up is Xbox Game Pass, with 2 new additions coming this week. The first one being Crypt Custodian, a top-down Metroidvania about cleaning up the afterlife. You play as Pluto, a mischievous cat who has died and is sentenced to be the Afterworld's janitor. The second edition is a musical, non-violent and poetic platformer called Symphonia. In it, you'll use the power of your violin coupled with your platforming skills to gather an orchestra to bring the musical machinery of the world back to life. Both games will arrive on Game Pass Tuesday, the 3rd of June. The Epic Game Store is once again giving away 2 games this week. The first game Epic is giving away is the cause of nightmares that are still haunting me to this day. The excellent, yet for any arachnophobe out there, nightmarish puzzle platformer Limbo. There you have to guide a boy to safety while a giant spider lurks in the shadows, more than ready to make the boy his next lunch. If spider-fueled nightmares aren't your thing, maybe you'll love the lighthearted fun and chaos in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, a perfect appetizer for when Borderlands releases in September. Both games are free to claim until Thursday, when they'll get replaced with 2 more mystery games. And not to be outdone, Amazon has added 6 games to their rapidly growing giveaway list. First up, Uncle Bezos is giving away an Epic Games key for Jennifer Wilde, Unlikely Revolutionaries, and another Epic Games key for Liberté. Next up are 3 keys for their own Amazon Prime gaming launcher, Master Plan Tycoon, Trinity Fusion, and Samurai Bringer. To cap things off, they are also offering a GOG code for the excellent but aging Golf with Your Friends. And there you have it, the first recap of June 2025. Now, I'm not sure how I'll tackle next week's episode just yet. Should I make an extra long one covering both the news and the Summer Game Fest, or 2 separate ones? Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see. And I do hope you enjoyed this week's episode, so if you did, I'd be extremely honored if you could hit that thumbs up button. If you loved it, maybe hit that subscribe button, and if you hated it, please let me know why in the comments below. I sincerely hope you have an awesome week, and I'll see you here again next Sunday.